welcome to a new episode of the Unicorn Bakery. My name is Fabian Tausch, and today we will have a look at Adam Singolda's and Taboola's recipe for success. Adam founded Taboola in 2007. Today, Taboola is a public company with more than $1 billion in revenue annually. And Taboola recommends content to you and me as a user, for example, at the end of an article you read on the New York Times website. Taboola reaches more than 500 million daily active users via the outlets that integrated the recommendation engine. Happy to talk about everything it takes to build such a flywheel. Adam, welcome to the Unicorn Bakery.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Let's get right into it. I mentioned it, you built a B2B2C company that reaches 500 million people a day. You're targeting me and everybody who's listening as an end user through all the articles and videos I consume. What does the Taboola flywheel look like, and what were the hardest parts about getting it to spin fast enough?
We have two-sided marketplace. On the one side, we work with publishers, that we all love, like Ströer or CNBC or ESPN, and many amazing publishers that we trust and love and visit daily. And then on the other side of it, we have marketers, businesses that are trying to reach consumers. So that the very initial, kind of phase for Taboola was mainly to build a trust and relationship with publishers such that they want to work with us, ideally forever, to drive, audience to their site. Once people get to their site, we can engage them, with the AI and recommendations. And you've seen our product before. If you've ever visited, I mentioned the BBC and so many websites around the world, about 8,000 of them. You've seen at the bottom of the article or on the homepage, it will say you may also like, and then recommending you more videos, more articles from the site that you're currently on, as well as paid content and products from the web. It's kind of like Amazon, if you bought this product, you may also like this, but for the open web. And the open web really goes to the Taboola mission and category that we operate within. Taboola operates within the open web, which is everything outside of walled garden, that is Google and Facebook and Amazon. And the idea is that there's so many publishers and journalistic organizations and apps on your phone and apps on your TV that just don't have the AI that Google has. They don't have the amount of advertisers that Facebook may have. And they can't engage consumers in the same way, but we do, or at least we believe we're on our way to have a lot of it as it compares to Google and Facebook. So we are working with all of these publishers and organizations, and we are empowering them to be able to personalize the experience for consumers. So this is really the beginning of our journey, of our story, working with the open web, identifying ourselves as the Robin Hood of the open web, such that we'll never compete with our friends like Google and Facebook so often do. And over time, of course, many things changed.
I listened to a few podcast interviews that you did in preparation for this one. And one thing you mentioned is that you nearly shut down Taboola several times in the early days. And take us back to that time so that people can understand, because today it looks quite easy because we're talking about being a public company, being like having more than $1 billion in revenue per year. And it is super hard to understand what happened back then. But why did you have to shut it down for more than one time? Nearly, at least.
Yeah, it's never easy, but it may be even harder now. I'll go. It's always. There's always a different challenge, as you progress on your journey, as a founder, as an executive, as a member of a company. Early days, for us, when I started Taboola is my first job. Before that, I spent almost 7 years as an engineer in the army. I grew up in Israel, and I started Taboola from my parents' house because I couldn't find anything to watch on TV, and I thought, you go to Google to search if you know what you want. But what happens if you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing next? And there needs to be a recommendation engine that helps us make decisions, discover things we love but never knew existed. So that was 2007. I spent the first 4 years, almost 5 years, basically just trying to find a product market fit, trying to find publishers who wanted recommendation engines. At the very beginning, there was no advertising model at all. And I tried every different, business model you can imagine. Revenue share from the advertising revenue we generated, SaaS model, a mix of the two. It was uniquely hard. We generated no revenue most of the time, and from time to time some test revenues. But in the first 5 years, it was really hard. We were 10 people, 15 people, 8 people, very small team. Very hard to imagine as it's compared to Taboola right now, which is almost 2,000 people. So back in the day, it was hard to raise money because honestly, I'm not sure I would invest in myself if I met me. It was my first job, no experience, no revenue, 4 years on the go. It was very hard. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're asking yourself about raising money, remember that all you need is one person that says yes, right? So much of it is about your own conviction that you're doing what you should be doing and that you're doing it with the right people. So for us, 3 times we were in a situation where we had money for a month and a half or so, and we already had a plan to kind of, shut down the company or let most of the people go, which was very sad because you can imagine this is a very tight family at that point. And we were always, lucky. And I said lucky, even though I believe you have to work very hard for your luck, but the first time around, my CTO and I went to raise money from this VC. And Lior said, well, I will invest a little bit of money. So the VC said, okay, if you invest, then I'll invest too. Another time, a friend of mine said, who was a very successful entrepreneur, said, okay, I will invest. And people said, well, when you invest, then I'll invest. Every time something happened. And then it was only end of 2011 when I came back from Sand Hill Road. Sand Hill Road is that place in the West Coast that you can meet many, 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 many investors at the same time. It's a bit depressing because it's kind of like gray buildings and a lot of doors and everything looks the same. But you do what you need to do. So I went there and I met about 30 investors and they all said no. And that was the end of 2011, and I came back to New York, and it was the third time I almost had to shut down Taboola, and I was introduced to this investor who just started a new fund, and they gave Taboola $1.5 million with the premise that we will launch an advertising model, and that was a new business model we tried. And with that funding, $1.5 million, and this new kind of opportunity, we started to grow for the first time really, really, really fast. 2012, we grew from hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to north of $200 million in revenue in 2014. So it was a rocket ship. Every day I used to send, if you worked at Taboola at the time, we used to send, people, employees kind of like a daily record if we had a record, and it was almost every day. So it just felt like a great time to be alive. And looking back, you never know what was the moment that made it happen. But I think a lot of times it's about having the right people around you that you can share your pain with and kind of, lean on each other. I think I was a bit naive. It was my first job. I didn't know better. Maybe if I was a very experienced executive, I would shut down Taboola because I thought it's not going so well. But I was naive and keep doing what I'm doing. And like I said, I think you have to kind of really love it, such that even if someone told you as a founder that if you would do this for 10 years and you failed, if you still did it, then you're probably doing the right thing. And that's kind of that was Taboola me then, and that's Taboola me now. I'm as in love with Taboola as I ever was.
Would you say it's a burden or an advantage to be naive as a founder?
I don't know if I don't really subscribe to these strong definitions. I think you have to be authentic with yourself and never lie yourself to yourself. So long that you tell yourself the truth about what you think you're good at and where you really are, you have an advantage because you're able to make decisions that are faster and in the right direction. And the more the more you believe you deserve to win for whatever reason. Someone really famous investor gave you money. Does that mean you deserve to win? No. You hired a really amazing executive from Google and he chose to join you. Does that mean you have to win? You deserve to win? No. So really, I think it's less about, for me, by the way, I think being naive just gave me the license to not know any better. So I think in many ways there's something beautiful about being naive, but especially if it's balanced with someone on your team that maybe is less, and then together you can make that decision. But to me, it's always about being authentic with yourself first, and with your team, and being open-minded and open and transparent. And that mainly allows you to self-correct as you go. Because remember that most startups change themselves many, many times on their way to a great product market fit, right? It's very common. And the difference between companies who shut down completely to companies who are here to tell the story on this podcast, like many that have been here before me, are those who I think self-corrected and made decisions faster, and were okay, making mistakes on the way.
Why I'm asking is because if I talk to investors, everybody's like, yeah, we need the strong founding team and best case serial entrepreneurs, or have seen a scale up and, let's say, have been in this head of VP C-level position at a company like Taboola, and now they're founding something and then we're funding them. And that's why I'm asking if it's because it seems so like we don't want to have these founders out of university, or first-time founders without a first job that they did, and it's interesting.
I think investors, look, there's statistic that shows that serial entrepreneurs tend to be more successful, so it makes sense. But investors, your first investor, the person who gives you money first, they never give you money because the idea is great. They never give you money because the market is big. They give you money because they want to give you money, believing their belief is that you will change and adopt and make the right decision. And great founders and great CEOs tend to do four things really well. They tend to raise money well. They tend to go in the right direction. They tend to bring great people into the company. And they tend to be humble enough to do whatever it takes. That's the fourth thing. Whatever the company needs, they'll do. They'll make coffee, they'll meet a client, whatever they need, right? So your first investor, again, you don't need many to say yes. You need one. And that one, usually you should, if you're raising money, you should meet people that there's a higher chance they'll choose you. Could be in your local market, could be in your language at first, because they'll vibe with you. Whatever that is. And then from there, you'll have a chance to prove yourself. Right? So you don't need everyone to say yes. And that's why both investors and founders are correct. Investors are right in trying to find teams that have done certain things, and that's fine. And some investors are looking for, going, in a more provocative way, and look for people that are, doing things for the first time, or have huge dreams. Look, Google founders were first-time founders. Facebook founder was first-time founder, right? Amazon was first-time founders. So, I mean, can it happen? It can happen. You can build the biggest companies in the world with zero experience and doing something for the first time. But again, I just tend to not follow rules and say, well, the only way it should go is that way. I think you just have to ask yourself, what's my competitive advantage? What do I bring that is unique to me and is setting me apart? And if you're true to yourself and this is significant, you have a chance.
You built Taboola for more than 16 years. What was your personal journey and transformation as a founder and CEO throughout the years?
I mean, so much. Being in Israel for the first 2 years and kind of establishing the first team, and having my CTO join me, and then moving to the US for the first time, and then going from few employees to 100 employees, and that's a whole cultural change. And then from one product to multi-product, and that's a whole different evolution. And then from one key market to the US to a global market, and being diverse on that front. And I think a lot of times, it's great to not plan too long. Like, it's great to have a very big vision, but you should build a plan that's good for the next 2-3 years, and then iterate. Make it work and then make it better. So for me, over the years, when I was in Israel, I never thought about being a 1,000 people company. When I was in the US, 100 employees, I never thought of being, never thought of going to make $1 billion in revenue. And every time you get to that milestone, you can redefine your dreams and then build a plan for the next 2-3 years. So I think, and now, the biggest change that happened to me since I launched my first family, which was Taboola, is, kind of having my second family, which is, I got married here in the US. I have 3 kids. 5.5, 3.5, and 10 months. And that is, at the end of the day, I feel like it's my purpose in life, to be a father and a family man, because I just enjoy this. It's the best startup of all. Every day, new feature, it's the best innovation. So kids are just the best. So I feel, that has been probably the biggest transformation personally, to date.
I think it makes sense to ask about your typical week here because it's sometimes especially for younger founders, hard to understand how to uh, run two families at once.
Yeah.
So, how does a week in your life look like?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I travel a lot. Um, I think so. I think you always should do whatever you feel needs to be done. So that means usually, especially as a founder, um, and I still look at Taboola as, even though we're almost 2,000 people, $1.5 billion in revenue, a public company. I still think of us as early days when Google went public. They were about our size now, and Google is bigger since. So I still think, I look at Taboola. I tell Taboolars we're 2,000 co-founders, because it's just the beginning. So I think it's there's a lot going on, and you should do everything you can to make an impact. And we can go back to that, because I think so much about company success is execution, and a group of people that are just passionate about something, and working together towards that goal. Because I think most people are not geniuses. Like, some people are, but most people are not. So most people, what makes them unique is just their ability to work, to be part of a team, to be empathetic to their clients, to their prospects, to their colleagues, and to work together better than other companies, other teams. That is innovation. I think it's the biggest innovation, more than funding, more than experience, more than even being a genius or not. So in that vein, I think what I try to do is I work hard. I try to speak about those values with people at Taboola, because I don't think someone needs to work 20 hours a day to be successful. I think, but I also think you need to have daily moments. Fabian, you and I talked about it before the podcast. But if you think about it, I don't plan, this Christmas vacation and hope it happens so that I can relax. I think that's a huge mistake, because then you live from one peak to another peak, from cliff to cliff. I try to think about things that make me happy on a daily basis, and I try to get some of those whenever I can. All right, so I play Legos with my kids. I play the piano. We're now playing Zelda on the Nintendo. So all those things, that make you happy on a daily basis. It's actually a daily Christmas. We do math in the morning. I do bath time. I read books to the kids. Unless I have something really important, I'm reading those books. You cannot stop unless, again, if it's really important, I'll do it. But otherwise, I want an hour to do it, and it makes me happy. It re-energizes me, and I can go back and do whatever I need to be doing. So I'm happier at work. I'm happier at home, and I think that work-life balance is really important, but in a way that is distributed on a daily basis almost, so that you can do it forever.
A friend of mine who was the former chief HR officer at Adidas, he called it at some point work-life integration. And I loved it because it makes you think about, okay, what would a perfect week look like, and how can I integrate work and life into my life and not try to think those are completely different things that are working against each other. And since then, I try to think about it more often as work-life integration than work-life balance.
Yeah, and also I realized that I'm not good at doing things in tandem, in parallel. So when I'm with you on a podcast, I'm just with you. When I'm with my kids, I'm just with my kids. I'm not reading emails while speaking with them. When I'm in a meeting, I'm not reading emails. When I'm on Zoom, my video is on. So all those things that just make me in the moment. Otherwise, I'm wasting your time, and then I'm wasting my time. So I just try to be, again, being honest with myself. I don't think I'm that good at doing things in parallel. In fact, I think most people are not that good at doing many things at the same time. So I just try to make the moment count, whatever it is that I'm doing. And I think if you do that, you actually have more time to sleep. You can eat better, live a better life, and be much more productive at work.
In business, often things that are just, they are not important. They're like just you have to do them now from the perspective that you have. I just forgot the proper word, but um, how do you decide if something is important enough to say, okay, I have to skip the reading session, the book session with my kids tonight? How do you assess that?
Yeah, I think because I care about it a lot. I mean, again, it can be depend on the time. It can be a call with someone that is in a time zone that this is the only time they can talk, and it's an important call, and I want to do it, and they don't want to do it, so I'm doing it. It can be that I need to travel somewhere. But remember, because I want to be with my kids, and this is the honest truth, then it's easier for me to make that decision because I know what I want to do. So the alternative is clear to me, and then like I said, when I'm not with them and I'm at work, then I'm trying to be very in the moment and effective, so that I can make a difference. So, and I think when it's like this famous sentence of this judge who said, it's porn when you see it. So sometimes all these hard decisions are easy decisions because you know it when you see it. You know if you need to do something because it's in front of you. So I think whether that's you have to be away from the house, maybe that's a meeting you have to take, fly, multiple flights. Sometimes I would fly to India for the day, and that's like 15 hours away from here, and that's okay because otherwise I would not be able to do something back home. So you just have to balance those things, but always be in it to win it. Be, from our perspective, bring your passion and energy, because you live once. You can always fail and go work for Google, but if you work for your company and your company you started, this is it. You're living the dream. Whether that dream ends with success or not, financial success, it's still a dream, because you get to build it, the culture, the people that do it with you. So I think it when you see it.
I think that's a good reminder. Then figuring out what's actually important needs your personal thought on what are you actually trying to achieve, and not only in the business life and side of things, but also in the personal life. And then you have to prioritize correctly, but you can only do that if you know the direction you're going to.
Right. Also, what we do at Taboola is that we're having these sessions where we're kind of asking ourselves, we'll sit in a room and we'll say to each other, here's what I think I should do, the top 3 things I should do so I can make an impact at Taboola. And then the team will say, we'll literally during this together, and it's a fantastic session. We do this every 6 months or so, but just to calibrate. And the team will say, wait a second, why is this your number 3? I completely think this is bullshit. Like, you should do something else. And it's great. We give each other feedback. We defend our time. We defend the things we want to do. And I really like that because I get to be outside of my own kind of, horizon, and I get people's feedback, and they say, wait a second, this is completely not in line with what we said we should do. And you fix it and you calibrate. And then, by the way, we communicate that to other people. We say, by the way, these are the top 3 things I'm doing. So other people know. And all of these things make it easier for you to decide and prioritize. I want to do things that are related to the top 3 things we decided I'm going to do.
This might sound like a very trivial question, but I think sometimes it's hard to understand what a day-to-day looks like for or at least the tasks that you have on the plate and on the table all day long. How much time do you spend with your leadership team, managing them, recruiting them? How much time do you spend with important clients, with investors? So how is your time structured throughout the Taboola ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's kind of earnings. We're a public company now, almost 2 years. So this podcast is our 2 years anniversary celebration.
Congratulations!
Thank you, sir. So it wasn't boring, let me tell you. So it depends. Now it's earnings season, so it's a lot of times that means for a few weeks, around once a quarter, I'll participate in different events and I'll meet investors, existing investors, new investors, and so forth. There's always, like I said, we always have our priorities. Right now, our top 4 priorities as a company are: 1, Yahoo. We signed a large partnership with Yahoo for 30 years, which is just amazing. It's going to be amazing globally, in Germany, in Europe, in all around the world. People will feel this partnership as it launches. So that's I'm invested in that. The second thing is our advertising technology, our core technology. We're investing a lot in that. The third one is e-commerce, and the fourth one is bidding into different type of inventory that we're currently not powering. So all those four things, those are the top four. There's like 30 things Taboola is doing, but those four are the top four. So I spend more time on those. We're not hiring a ton of people now, so I spend less time with hiring, but I do spend a lot of time on culture. So from my perspective, the things that I always ask myself, how do you scale a startup? How does it feel in a room? Because a culture it's not a list of values you put on your in the office bathroom. It's not just 10 words that you can remember by heart. A culture is how do you behave in a certain situation. A client emailed you in the evening and they have a huge issue. Do you get back to them? Do you FaceTime them? Do you tell them I can't talk now, I'll talk to you? What do you do? A colleague of yours has an issue. There's an opportunity. How do you behave is a company's culture. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about, transparency and empathy and sense of urgency and things of that nature. Even though in many ways our challenge now is that we're probably the biggest in our space. When you're not the biggest, you have someone ahead of you you're trying to beat and overcome. It's like Formula One. You're seeing who you're supposed to beat. But when you're the biggest in our space, then you have no one ahead of you. I mean, you have big companies ahead of you, Google, Facebook, Amazon. But then you have to be a great version of yourself because you are executing greatly. And so right now, so much of it is culture. So we do all hands every 2 weeks. And, almost 2,000 people ask questions and we answer every question people ask. We're speaking about, our office experiences and how do we collaborate with each other. So there's just a lot of that I spend my time on. So I would say big clients always and around our priorities. Culture is, and Taboola's behavior and execution is, and then the last one is whatever is needed. And that changes all the time.
Fair enough. Talking about culture and scaling culture while scaling the startup, what are your thoughts on how to design a culture? When do I start? How do I start? How do I start thinking about it without overcomplexing it? When do I then have to think about it more because otherwise I'm not making enough thoughts about it? So how does it change over time?
I think it depends on the founding team and the management team, and right. So for us, we feel strongly about, some of the things I mentioned earlier about being transparent with each other. I just mentioned this session when we give each other feedback, but, we actually have 2,000 people give each other feedback and ask questions. We prioritize passion, intelligence, and empathy versus experience. So when we think about who can be a great person at Taboola, it's not that we don't like you if you worked for Google or if you're not getting negative points, but it's not gonna give you a preference over someone that we think is a great candidate for the reasons I mentioned. Because what happens over time is that passionate people, intelligent people, obsessed people that have empathy, on a day-to-day basis, they tend to learn what they need, and they tend to overcome and take more risks than experienced people, because experienced people have something to lose. So by doing that, we were able to build this culture that really promotes this from within. And if you look at people who manage Taboola, our head of revenue, right, like $1.5 billion P&L, before Taboola was a chef. Our CTO before Taboola was in cyber. Our COO before Taboola was in video. It was an advisor to a video company. Before that, he was a rocket scientist. And we have one of our best engineers was a musician before, and I can go on and on and on. And I think there's something beautiful about giving each other a chance, because when you bet people, they'll give you a chance back over a very long period of time. And as you struggle and evolve as a company, and remember that everything around you always change, but the culture and the people that you do something with, that never changes. I can copy your website. I can copy your pitch. I can raise money. I can copy your presentation and logo, but I can't copy your culture. I can't do what you do, because that is a feeling, that is a behavior. So so when I, like, to your question, we promote those values and those features in people. We celebrate certain mistakes to promote people taking a chance. I just had that actually last week. We had this thing at Taboola. Something didn't go well. We love data, so we did this root cause analysis. We evaluated what happened, and my first reaction was, good job, because we just talked about something that didn't go well. We all took it super seriously because it was important to us. We had junior people, senior people on the call, so everybody got to experience this together. And we're probably not going to do it again. Or if we do it again, we do less of it. So all those small things, I think, contribute to kind of, what is it to be at Taboola. And I really like it. I mean, 15 years or plus into this journey, it still feels like I look around. So many of us have been together for more than 10 years, which is awesome. It's fun. But even people who joined recently, kind of like it fits together. It makes sense. So I think my advice is, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, you have to kind of be yourself. So if what I just said as an example sounds ludicrous to you, don't do it. Do whatever feels right for you, and whatever you can strongly advocate and execute with. So, because execution is the only thing that will differ between you being invited to this podcast or not. Execution and telling you the story.
It's interesting because, first of all, I love it. But second of all, we also, as we have it with serial entrepreneurs, we also have it with, you have to hire as senior as possible in the early days, and also still later. But it sounds like you're promoting training on the ground, coaching people, giving people opportunities, trusting them that they're trying to do the best for the company, rather than just hiring for the skill set, hiring for attitude more than, you have worked here and there, and that's why we hire you. And
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the biggest mistakes I've made in the Taboola journey was usually when I made decisions because I was supposed to make that decision versus really what I felt inside, and every time I was starstruck because someone was very successful, or someone, I would be so lucky if they joined us, or whatever that is. A lot of times it didn't work out, not because they were bad people or because of any other reason. They were great. They were just not great for that moment in time for Taboola. And because Taboola needed different level of risk taking in different stages of the company. So when people join you, remember, that depends on where you are on that journey. You want to be able to take risks together and make mistakes together. This economy of good enough, do things, try things, fail, and keep going. And different stages, might require different people. As a public company, as an example, you want someone that understands financials and can be a good CFO. By the way, our CFO, who I would argue is the best CFO I've ever met, is a first-time CFO. Public company, NASDAQ, earning calls, analyst, you name it. Amazing CFO, first time CFO, right? So I know I'm right because I look around, I have the best people around me. And you speak about coaching them. I think it's coaching each other, right? Because many of us it's my first job. And in many ways, Taboola was a sequence of first jobs, right? Because so many times it's the first time you're doing something. The first time, you have an M&A, the first time you raise money, first time you have your, growth fund, the first time you go public, the first time you're over 1,000 people. There's so many first times. So it's this forever coaching, mutual coaching.
when you think about your C-suite, leadership team, management team, however we call them, what is important to you? What is the thing that you're actually looking for when you're hiring them?
I mentioned some of it, right? Like I mentioned the passion and intelligence and all those things. If it's, a lot of times as part of my recruiting process, I'll just go and what I like to do is I like to take a problem I already have, so a real problem I'm working on. I don't really care so much about, so as it relates to keeping, NDAs and making sure people don't know what I'm working on. I tend to care less about it. Of course, within reason, as a public company, we have MNPI and all those things. But so long that it's not a big topic that people should care about, I like mentors. I like talking about it because, again, for me, it's not about who was first. It's about who was better, right? So I just want to get feedback and collaborate about problems I have. And I think at Taboola we want to do that. So when I hire someone, I like to pick up a problem that I have. Sometimes we'll just go for a beer or coffee, and we'll spend a couple of hours talking about that problem, and we'll work on it together. Now, I don't expect the other person to give me, the perfect answer or advice. I want to just talk about it together and see how it feels like to work together and talk about something together. I do that, and I think that's a great opportunity actually for both of us to see what it feels like. So the candidate feels like what it's like to work with me and talk to me about stuff, and vice versa. Another thing I like is I like to hear about someone's huge obsession about something. It can be anything. It can be they love dancing. It can be they love playing Nintendo. It can be they love playing the piano. They love running. They love building Legos. They love writing poems. Something that they can't stop when they talk about it. They have this fire in their eyes. I think it's great to see, because usually when that happens, you see people get into the details and they speak about it and they speak about the industry and what other people do, good days and bad days. So you can really see someone thinking about something they really care about that hopefully might become Taboola one day. So I do that too. I just give you, there's some of the things I like to do. Of course, multiple people meet that person, and then again, it's an opportunity for both of us to kind of get to know each other. But those are some of the things I do.
I love that. Question that I think a lot of people have in mind, and you said a lot of things changed, but what actually changed when you went public?
Oh my God, so many things. I can't tweet anymore. So first of all, you have to get used to kind of, the public company cycle every 3 months. I write a letter every 90 days. I love writing that. It actually forces me to stop and think and write. I love writing. So I write that about the business. Then you meet investors, and that obviously that's a new thing. The second thing is that I actually try to be a bit better with managing my time, because there's not enough time. You can't do everything you wanted to do before, and on top of that, meet investors, meet analysts, all those things. So you have to be even better at managing your time, and I think I'm working hard on that. I think it validated our journey and dreams going public. Suddenly, we're not huge, but we're not small anymore. And that was a great kind of source of validation from the market, from our partners, thanks to our partners and clients who really supported us all these years. And also, I haven't raised money in such a long time, because at first I raised money all the time as a founder, I raised money all the time. But then since 2014, I kind of didn't raise money because we were profitable. I didn't need to raise money. So now that we are a public company, I get to meet many great investors who asks us great questions, and I like it. It's like the investor view of this podcast, right? Like they ask you questions about the business, and you think about it, and that kind of it's another version of it's another view of your business that you get to interact with, and I like it. So I think all those things happened since we went public, and now we're just thinking about what's the next big thing.
What's on the list?
Oh my God, so many things. But I can't tell you now. I want to be reinvited.
Sure. Fair enough. Good point. In order to go public, you needed to build an ed tech giant. So you had to be especially with open web, you had to be pretty much everywhere. So how do you think about expansion? You are in so many markets now. You expanded to a lot of countries. So what are your thoughts on global expansion? When did you start with it? How necessary was it from the beginning? Because of course, the internet is everywhere, so you could maybe also just start and see who picks it up. But how is the expansion story?
I think when it comes to global expansion, you should do it not too fast. So one, you always ask yourself, what is the market that I can't lose? For us, it was the US. It's not always the case, but when you know what that market is, whether that's your local market where you are, or in our case it was the US. Depends which industry you're in. Then I think you want to make sure that you have enough investment in that market, so that once you start, dilute your energy and expand, you still have enough chances of not losing that market and keep winning that market. So I think you want to first make sure you're doing everything you need to be doing for that key market first. You can always go global, but you can't lose your key market. So I would say you focus on your key market first. You make sure you establish everything you need to get enough momentum, and then you can start thinking about more. And then for us, what we did was at first was more of a hub strategy. So we started by having offices like in Europe, it was in London, in Asia Pacific, it was in Bangkok, and Sao Paulo in Latin America. And then we had people in that office that spoke different languages and would travel back and forth at first, because that allowed us to have a strong culture in one office, but travel a bit more. As a certain market became bigger, we opened offices in markets, sometimes one, sometimes two. Like in Germany, we have 2 offices, right? So and then you would have maybe a few dozens of people in the market. So we kind of took this first key market, second stage hubs, third stage in market, as the market kind of became big enough, crossed a certain threshold.
It's interesting because I'm in a quite similar position right now, super small scale, but I had the opportunity to go more global 4 or 5 years ago. I had great people on the show, Guy Kawasaki, one of the co-founders of Slack, of GitHub, and other companies. And I was like, if I'm going global right now, that was back in 18, 19, I would have not done anything great in Germany yet. So it would be just a mediocre podcast in Germany and a mediocre podcast in the US over time. So I would not have anything to be my USP. And I said, okay, I have to build the best and largest founder podcast in Germany first, because then I have a positioning that helps bridging the gap into the US or other countries. And it was like, I'm amazed that it somehow seems to work out, and that I became the largest player for founders, and that it now works bringing people like you on the show. But it was exactly the same reasoning, that I was like, okay, if I'm now being just a mediocre podcast in Germany, I will definitely not have the standing here to build something on top of it. But now with this positioning that I have, because I spent 3 more years on the German market, which is a long time, but I'm just a content-driven play, so it's a different story here. But it gave me way more opportunity to then internationalize or on scale on a different level. And it's interesting because it's like this is exactly what you mentioned on a super small scale.
No, that I think that obviously works for you, and I think you're a great example of establishing an anchor that it has enough momentum that allows you to then go beyond.
When did you have the feeling that you have enough of an anchor to go beyond?
It was one. It was driven by 2 things. It was driven by people. So as soon as I had our CTO, I moved to the US. I left Israel because I felt like that was it. He was my anchor. And then when our COO joined in 2012, we already had the office in the UK, but that was the beginning of us that was it was a people anchor. I felt like we can now really start to do more, complicate our business more. And then from a revenue perspective, by 2014, I thought that we were having, when we got to more than $200 million in revenue, which was mostly US, I felt like we can do a lot more. In 2013, I believe, we opened our office in Bangkok. So it was after our COO joined, and we opened that office, and we started expanding as we grew from 2014, when the company was more established financially. We raised, it was our growth fund from Fidelity and others. That's when we we started, kind of complicate ourselves more. And it was not only just more geographies, it was also more products.
It's interesting. One question that I have in mind, we talked about until 2011, money was always an issue. You always had to figure out, okay, where do I get money from investors? How do I find a business model that works? And then let's say in 2014, with more than 200 million in revenue and becoming more and more profitable, money wasn't the issue anymore. How did your what changed in that moment from a mindset and from a I can now do larger bets perspective and from a confidence perspective because you found something that worked? What kind of leverage did you have?
I think it's when we got to that scale. You never think I don't need money anymore. You always have this anxiety of making sure you can put the lights on. But I think at that point it's when we evolved from a single product to a multi-product, which is a very hard thing to do. It's uniquely hard to do more than one thing well. And it's when we kind of expanded from just a widget to editorial tools for writers and editors. And we got into e-commerce over time, and we built a business with OEMs and carriers, and we just started to diversify our offerings to publishers and advertisers, such that people would want to work with Taboola for multiple reasons, not just because they want to grow revenue, but rather because they want to engage the entire company with Taboola. And we that those days and that kind of level of security allowed us to do that.
Was that also to be as deeply integrated as possible, that it's not like as easy to just switch out a widget if there is a competitor that somehow might do something that could be
Yeah, I mean that's why we did it. But I mean, if you do it too early, you might break everything, right? So you want to do it when you can support the core continuing while you're investing in something that might take you years, right? So maybe a decade. So that's what I mean by just doing things at the right time, not too soon, but not too late either.
EdTech is a market that's like a lot of competitors since ever, since at least since I think about startups. How do you see the future of EdTech? So we're currently in a time, we're in May 2023 when everybody talks about generative AI and AI in general. And it's about, okay, how can it impact different industries? And I can imagine that a lot of analysts also ask you, what's your take on AI? And you also already mentioned that you're using it, but how will it affect the EdTech market in the future?
Yeah, I think there are a few big changes that are taking place. One is privacy. I think, by the way, obviously you see that in Europe even more. But I mean, I think, which is, I think, great. So I think there's a privacy trend. People want to be safe. We don't want to be enough with the retargeting, enough of seeing visiting a shoe store and suddenly every place I go, shoes follow me. We don't want that anymore. Like we're not, we're freaked out. So I think that we're moving to a future that is more contextual and it's less about me. It's about what am I doing now? What am I reading? What am I watching? So a proxy for my interests versus my identity. It's been too long since social companies be taking advantage of our data on other apps without our permission. So I'm so happy it stops, and it's stopping because it's not fully stopped, right? We still have more to do. But I think that's a big trend, which as a consumer I love, and as Taboola I love, because we've never done those bad things. So for us, we want a future that is just good and contextual and safe for consumers. The second thing is e-commerce as a trend. I think that we're going to buy more over time, a lot more from home versus from a store. And there's a big opportunity here to really build trust for publishers with different types of offerings so that consumers, buy financial services and travel and healthcare and education and products from publishers they love. So if you think about a website that I love because it's a local site that I go to every day or every week, I would feel good making decisions on that publisher site, right? Because I trust that site. We just announced with time.com that we're launching financial services and e-commerce websites for them because people have been reading time.com for 100 years. Of course, they would consider making a decision about something they care about on the site. So I think e-commerce is going to be a big trend. I think with generative AI and in general, the expansion of smart devices around us. Of course, mobile phones, but audio devices at home and our cars being connected and all those things. I think we're going to see news everywhere. Right now, we read news mainly on browser. But I mean, I think over time we'll see podcasts and videos. Your podcast should be in my Tesla. Like it should be automatically embedded in my car. I should open my car, get going, and say, "Hey, there's a podcast you may like," because it's online. Why is it not there? So I think we're gonna see podcasts and videos and text to audio and information kind of going beyond just the browser a lot over time. And with generative AI, it's going to be easier to ask for it. In the car, I'm going to say, "Hey, give me a podcast that I may like about this and this and that," and this will come up. So I think it's going to be easier to interact with. Maybe we'll have R2D2 like Star Wars in our home, like 3PO, like a gold robot will ask questions and it will just surface podcasts to us. Who knows? But I think that's going to be, a trend over time.
When I look at your video, I see that you already have R2D2 at your home, so therefore,
Of course,
in a Lego
of course.
version, but
Who
you
doesn't
still
have R2D2 in their home? I mean, that would be very embarrassing if any one of the listeners, has yet to bought the Lego R2D2. I expect you all to consider.
I should consider too. Last question that I think is interesting, even when we're going back to how to form not a team in this case, but an advisory board, because I think it's super hard for a lot of founders in the early stages. They just try to gather names that they can put on their pitch deck, and they're like, "Yeah, these are my advisors now," and everybody knows, yeah, they just gave you the permission to use their face and their name on the pitch deck. What would you say is actually important putting together a stellar advisory board?
You're asking, is it important to do it, or
what is important about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, but you can make a huge mistake. So for the most part, if you have a package for advisors that you're giving some shares to people who want to be, again, none of those advisors will do it because they're going to make so much money. This is it for them. They'll do it because they like you and they like what you're doing. So I think it's more about token of appreciation. You build a package that's, that is attractive, and then you can invite. You don't have to plan that well. You can actually have 5 or 10 or even 15 of them. It doesn't. I don't think it's that big of a deal, and it's less about, and different people will bring different things, right? Some of them could help you with your branding and thinking about your story. Other people might help you with getting to clients, getting to investors, just being there for you. So I think build a package that is attractive. Talk to your board of directors about how many, like what's the budget, so that you can get 10 of them as an example. And I don't think you should overthink it. So if there's someone that you like, that likes you, that you think can help you achieve something specific, then I think that person could be a good advisor. And again, I don't think they need to be superstars. And remember that superstars most of the time tend to not want to risk things they've already built for themselves. They may help you, but unless they like you, know you, spend time with you, and will do it with you even for free, don't choose a superstar because they're a superstar. That alone is not good enough.
And often enough, these are the people that get asked all the time, so they don't even have as much time to spend on your stuff because they're like involved in like 1,000 things or asked by 1,000 people. Hopefully they don't say yes to everything, but that's on a different piece of paper then.
Yeah, spend time with them before you make decisions. See how it feels like to work together. Then you decide after.
Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for being on the show. I would love to give you the last words of the podcast if you want to share anything that we haven't talked about or that is important to you with a lot of founders out there currently building their ventures. So thanks for being here. The last words are yours.
So first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the conversation. It was fun also. I don't have a big speech, just to say have fun too, because fun is important. Fun matters as well. So enjoy the ride.
Thanks for sharing Taboola's and your recipe for success in the Unicorn Bakery.